let's open up our file. This is where we stopped at last time. So we've got the front part of the frame assembled. I'm going to go to front view here. We've also put in the side tubes, and we've connected those to the 90-degree angles that we've created. And we also have that base connection, that 14-inch base connection. So I've already cut the tube. So I've got the 7.5 inch, I've got the 14-inch, and we changed this one in the last video to 29, from 27 to 29, because once it's added to this connection, it should change the overall length. So it'll be greater than 29. What we were shooting for is about 30 inches. Let's measure the distance, and then we'll do a real-world assembly with these parts. So I'm going to go over here to in the far lower right hand corner, and I'm going to left click on that measuring tape. I'm going to go to the far edge here of that 90-degree angle. I'm going to left click on that. It gives me a point. And then I'm going to go to the other far end. I'm going to measure that distance. So the minimum distance is 16.359, and you can see that right here. I've just hovered over that. Max distance is 16.779, and I believe in a previous video I talked about how I wanted it to be about 16 to 16.5 inches. So I knew these 90-degree angles would add some distance to the width. Alright, so now let's look at how tall it's going to be. So you notice this little point has popped up, so I'm going to left click on that. I'm going to go up, I'm going to left click on the tallest part of that tube, and we're looking at minimum distance here in the Z axis, which you notice over here in the cube we're dealing with this axis here is 30.75 or 0.075, so right at 30 inches. Same thing for the max distance, so that's minimum distance. I'm going to hover over minimum distance, and the Z-axis is 30.075 inches. And then the max distance in that Z-axis is the same. And you can see that line pop up when I hover over the Z-axis. Notice that blue dotted line pops up. So it's indicating, all right, that's where your max distance is. And I'm going to do the same thing for the minimum distance. Again, it's showing those two that were measured out, those 2 points in the Z-axis. All right, now it's time to go assemble these parts. So if you've never used a tube cutter, I've already started to cut on that. You thread that down on your mark, and then you just turn that until you cut the piece off. This is 7.25 inches, so it's almost perfect for those side segments. So I'm going to save that video. So what I've got to do is I have to take out the supports. So that's kind of what they look like. This one doesn't have any because it was built in this direction here, and so it didn't need any supports, but these did. One way to clean this out without doing any damage to the part is take a pair of pliers and just pull these out, and they'll come out in segments. Another way is to take a drill and drill that out if it's a circle, but you don't want to damage the wall inside there, because then you damage the strength of the overall part. So it depends on what you're going to use it for. For us, we're just using this to assemble the structure right now, so we could use a drill and speed that up. You got to be careful because you don't want to drill through. It will go through here fairly quick and go through the side, and you don't want it to catch a finger. So I typically will make a divot and just do little, without much pressure, just a little bit of drilling. I'm only going to make it 1.5 inches deep, and it shouldn't go much further than that. So I'm going to stop with that one. I'll start on the other side. got to create a little divot, so I'm going to pull some of that out. Oh, I got the whole support. That was lucky. That doesn't happen very often. So the whole support came out, so I won't have to drill this one. But I will trim some of this down. Now you can take a piece of pipe and see how tightly it fits. So that one's fine. The top one's pretty tight. So I may take that drill bit and just slightly drill out those two. Anyway, let's insert this. Let's measure that and find out how deep that's going into the part. That looks like 1.5 inches. Yeah, we're just a little bit greater than 1.5 inches. So it's going to be close to what we saw on the model. So if there's any difference in overall length, either way, that may be the result. A little bit greater, that's almost 1.75 inches on that side. So if we're off a little bit in length, that's probably why. All right, let's see if that'll fit now. There we go. All right, so that is the length that we need. So we've got the base. We're gonna have to adjust the thickness on these 1-inch circles. So we're gonna go back, instead of 0.24, we're gonna go 0.2375 or 0.2385. Because these are just too thick. Because this one didn't have any supports, and I still had to drill that out a little bit to get the tube to fit in. Just, even though it fit, it's so tight, we could have broken this trying to fit it in. Yeah, so that's about 16 1/3. So that's really close to the, yeah, so that's right at 30 inches. That's perfect. That's exactly what it told us on the software. So we're good. Before we forget, let's go back into Part Studio. And that's our sketch, and this should change both. So we're going to open that up. There it is. Let's turn these other parts off so we don't see those. Let's go to our front view, and there we need to go down to the shell. Let's close that out. This should be the shell for those. Let's change that. So we need let's go 0.237. Let's go 85. Let's see if that helps. All right, so that should do that. Let's look at shell 2 and see what it's at. So 0.2385 is what we'll do each one of those. So we've got to go back in. Anything that would be aligned, anything below these two, that's a shell, we need to change. And that should have changed up the part. I'm going to go ahead and turn all of these back on. Let's go back to our assembly view. So we've not only assembled our parts, but we did a real life assembly as well and learned something from it. So that's the reason you need to kind of, if not have a full scale model, if that's not possible, at least do small scale models to see if all your measurements are actually matching up and making sense. It'll also help you get your angles and dimensions correct.